So Bijan Robinson versus Josh Jacobs. If you look at our rankings, Jamie has Bijan Robinson 3rd, and Heath has him 7th or 8th. And it's basically the exact opposite for Josh Jacobs. So, Heath, you will certainly, as of now, I know you've been open to changing the Bijan ranking. You have him 7th, and you have Jacobs 2nd, whereas Jamie has Jacobs 7th. I know that you're open to moving Bijan up. You'll certainly be the low guy on him and probably the high guy on Jacobs within the industry. So discuss why you prefer, not even close right now, Jacobs over Bijan.
Yeah, I would dispute that characterization that 3 versus 7 or 8 at running back's not even close. Like 4 or 5 spots in the ranking is not a massive difference.
That is not even close. Like that is
okay. Well, maybe Jamie will agree with you about that as well, but I don't think 4 or 5 spots in the running back rankings is not even close.
Let me ask you this. Sometimes I say, if I did 10 drafts, I would take this guy in 5 of them and this other guy in 5 of them. But your rankings would suggest that if you did 10 drafts, you take Josh Jacobs over Bijan Robinson 10 out of 10 times.
But I would not. If I did 10 drafts and I was playing for money in all of them, I'd probably take Jacobs in 7 of them, and I'd probably take Bijan in 1 or 2.
Okay.
Or 6 of them, maybe even 5. That's a lot of exposure.
Do you agree? Not even close?
4 spots? No, that's very close. I don't know what you're trying.
What Josh Jacobs is your number 2. Like, I agree that if we're talking about like wide receiver 35 versus wide receiver 31, that's really close. When Josh Jacobs is your number 2 running back, okay. Not even close.
I think I've justified multiple times why I think Josh Jacobs is the number 2 running back. It's because he's one of the only young workhorse backs coming back. And we're hoping Bijan's going to be that guy. I think Bijan has more competition for touches at running back. Josh McDaniels' offenses historically have produced a lot more throws to running backs than Arthur Smith's offense. A lot more throws, period. And they've averaged 91 targets, the Falcons, to running backs the last 3 years, and that includes the throws to Cordero Patterson where he was lined up as a wide receiver half the time. So it's just I think that the concerns I have for Jacobs is if Jimmy's on the pup to start camp, then I get more worried about that offense. Or if Jacobs actually holds out to start camp, then I've got more concerns about that. But if both of those guys are there on camp, I just have more certainty in Jacobs' role.
All right, Jamie has Bijan Robinson ahead of Josh Jacobs, and it's not even close. He's got Jacobs. He's got Jacobs 7th and Bijan 3rd. Anyway, go ahead, Jamie. What's your rebuttal?
Well, I mean, Heath kind of made it for me with his concerns about Jacobs because I shared the same ones. I think the quarterback situation, even if Garoppolo's there, is worse because I think it's a step down from maybe Derek Carr. I think what we've seen from Jacobs the last couple of seasons has been, and this is going to be an interesting test case, when there's been guys absent in the offense is when his passing game numbers have spiked. And so, Waller missing time last year, that's the best stretch of games that we saw from Jacobs in the passing game. The year before, it was when Waller and Hunter Renfrow were both out. And so, we'll see now with Waller being gone, but obviously the addition of Jacoby Myers. But really, it's just the whole thing. Jacobs just really makes me concerned about the situation. I think the Raiders could conceivably be one of the worst teams in the league based on everything that's happened to them this offseason. So I'm just a little down on what the situation can be. Yes, he's a star. He's proven that even when things haven't been right, he's been productive. And then last year when things were fantastic for him, he leads the league in rushing and has a superstar season. So he's got that upside. He's got the ability to be the NFL's leading rusher again, if this offense doesn't completely tank. But I just look at it for what the upside is for Bijan. Yes, he's probably going to share touches more so than Jacobs. I don't think that's a question. But there's so many opportunities there, and I think we'll see another wrinkle in this offense, from what Arthur Smith told me and how they're going to use Bijan and just how they're going to, deploy him as a receiver, which I think is something that he could definitely do and do it better than Jacobs as a pass catcher because he showed that in college. So I'm just more excited about Bijan. I'm more confident in the situation there. I think the schedule is more favorable for the Falcons. I think the offensive line is better for the Falcons. And maybe in the quarterback situation is better for the Falcons. If Jimmy's not right and like he said, he starts on the PUP list or maybe they go a different direction as they've sort of indicated is a possibility. So barring Tom Brady coming out of the ownership box and maybe taking over the reins of this offense, I'm just a little bit concerned about the Raiders overall.
Okay. Why do you think, Heath, that the public is so much more on Bijan than Jacobs?
He is a lot more. I mean, he's really, really exciting. He's a running back who was just taken in the top 10 in an Arthur Smith offense, and Arthur Smith used to run an offense that had Derrick Henry. And if I could do my Chris Towers impersonation, Josh Jacobs is Josh Jacobs. If Bijan Robinson could be anything.
Yeah. Except I think the problem is Josh Jacobs has been a different fantasy player for the first 3 years of his career than he was last year.
But he had a top 10. I mean, it's not like, sure. He had a season where he averaged, like, we talk about Tony Pollard, and I think a lot of people have Pollard ranked ahead of Jacobs. Pollard last year was what Jacobs was basically the 3 years before this year.
But he did that in a shared situation.
Right, as the number 2 back.
Right.
A little different.
Well,
I think the one thing with
I don't really believe he's always been in a shared situation. I don't believe he's going to be a workhorse running back this year. I think Tony Pollard will still be in a shared situation.
Oh, he might be. Not in the current construct of the roster right now, though. But if they bring back Zeke, then sure. I think if it's the guys that he's on the roster with now, he's going to dominate touches. I can't see them, all of a sudden saying, "Oh, Deuce Vaughn, just because your dad's a scout, we're going to make you a significant player or a guy that can get on the field." And Ronald Jones. I would hope that the commitment to Tony Pollard suggests he's going to take that next step and get maybe not the same opportunities that Josh Jacobs gets, but in a better situation. I think the thing about Jacobs that is to what you said, Adam. The first part of his career versus last year. Well, last year, new coach, as Heath alluded to. Josh McDaniels is obviously very good for what Jacobs wants to do, and then the contract situation. That's still the same. So despite the fact that he might hold out, which is clearly a huge negative if that's going to be the case, but if he comes back, he plays, he says, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to earn what you owe me or what some other team should hopefully pay me. Then you got to be excited about that because that was something that probably played into his production last season.
And I will say, I'm pretty much, I don't know anything about it. I'm pretty much dismissing the chances of Josh Jacobs actually not playing football games because of his contract. I just don't think you can look at what's happened. And I understand why running backs don't think it's fair, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them. But I don't think you can look at what's happened with Saquon doesn't get what he wants, and Dalvin doesn't get what he wants, and Hunt and Zeke and Fournette are all just sitting out there rotting. I can't imagine sitting out because you think the situation's going to get better.